All right, we are live. Uh, Thanks everyone for joining us. Uh, Back with week two of our Penn State postgame show. We don't have a fancy name for this yet, so if you guys think of one, feel free to let us know in the comments. Perhaps we'll come up with something between now and the whiteout against Auburn next weekend. But anyway, I digress. Once again, I'm Tim Aiden, editor, writer for Black Shoe Diaries on SB Nation's Penn State website. Marty, want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Marty Leap. I'm also editor/writer for Black Shoe Diaries and SB Nation. The plan is for most weeks for Tim and I to be your host. Unfortunately, due to prior commitments, I cannot be here last weekend, but I'm very excited to be here today and talk about another Nittany Lion victory.
Yes, indeed. Well, we're and quite a victory it was. This this is a Ball State team, which I think some people know. Maybe some people don't realize. You know, they're no slouch. I mean, they're the defending MAC champions. They finished in the top 25 last year, and they returned all but one or two of their starters from the previous year, and all their pretty much all their key offensive guys are back, including Drew Plitt, their quarterback, Justin Hall, their top receiver. I mean, this is a team that could potentially have given Penn State a difficult afternoon, but to to Penn State's credit, they ran with the momentum from that rock fight of a win at Wisconsin last week, and it kind of carried over early. The first two drives, they first two offensive drives end in touchdowns. They hold Ball State to 3 and outs. That they got up on them early, and even when Ball State punched back a little, like there were twice in the first half, they came down into the red zone, actually inside the 10-yard line, but they settled for field goals both times, which, again, the defense continued its whole bend but don't break theme. The offense did get a little, second half offense was a little shaky. Now, perhaps they got more conservative with play calling, so they don't show everything to Auburn for next weekend. But it felt like it could have been a little better. But, in the end, they put up 44 points. Of course, 7 of those you can credit to the defense, but still 37 offensive points. Not too shabby. Marty, what are your initial thoughts on today? Go ahead, Marty.
Sorry, yeah. No matter what you said, I mean, the defense did awesome. It was good to see when Ball State started to punch back. Penn State really punched back in return. I mean, I know Tim, you agree with me. There's been a lot of times in recent years as Penn State fans, we see them jump out to that early lead, 10-0, 14-0, 21-7, or might be the other team starts to punch back, and Penn State doesn't respond. And they responded today, which is great to see. And like you said, Ball State, yes, they're Ball State, but they're the defending MAC champions. They brought back a ton of starters, including a very good quarterback. Their quarterback really impressed me today. I thought he hung in there, took some really hard hits from a good Penn State defense, and just toughed it out. It's encouraging as a Penn State fan to see them come out and dispatch of a good Ball State team like this. To go back a couple years ago, Penn State plays Appalachian State in a very similar game and needed overtime to win. So I think you can see this Penn State program growing with a win like this, and it's good to see. I think Penn State's in a good spot right now, and it was a successful afternoon at Beaver Stadium.
No doubt. And I guess as far as performances are concerned, Sean Clifford, he's a guy who's been much debated about amongst the Penn State fan base. And today, again, I'd say it was mostly good for him. Obviously, some things to work on. There were a few times he overthrew a receiver, which could have either ended up with a huge gain or could have ended up in a touchdown. So, those are things that I think might be fixable as things go forward. I think most importantly, Cliff, once again, did not make any crucial mistakes, didn't make any, throw any boneheaded interceptions or fumble the ball away. Like, he did a tremendous job. Just if he was being pressured, he either just try to run away or just he threw the ball away. Just he didn't try to force the issue anywhere. So you give him credit there. And, his stat lines you can kind of see going along the bottom there, 230 yards, 21 29 passing, a touchdown. He did also, I didn't put it there, but he did also carry for about 65 yards today. So I think picked up most of the second half. But Marty, what were your impressions of Cliff as for today?
Yeah, a lot of what you said, Tim. The no turnovers is big. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but in Sean Clifford's career as a starting quarterback, I'm pretty certain Penn State has never lost a game in which he has not turned the ball over. I could be wrong, but I'm like 95% certain that they've never lost a game when Clifford doesn't turn over. It's turnovers of Cliff, man. He's going to make throws. He's got a lot of arm talent. Anyone who's watched Penn State recent years knows that. But it all comes down to the decision making for him, and I thought his decision making today was good. Actually, as we're recording this, I'm currently working on my 3 takeaways article for Black Shoe Diaries, and one of the things I mentioned in that is Clifford's decision making being better. Him knowing when to just tuck the ball, get my 5 yards, and get out of bounds. Him knowing when to throw the ball away. And I think that those are things that could probably be traced back to Mike Yurcich now being the offense coordinator / quarterback coach at Penn State, because I think that is a big improvement for the Nittany Lions. And I think if Clifford continues to play this way, where he's playing clean football, not turning the ball over, it's not unreasonable to look for Penn State to be a 10-win team or so this year and to be right there with Ohio State to compete for a Big Ten championship. Because I think outside of Clifford, coming into the season, I think most people around Penn State would agree that outside of Clifford in the quarterback position, this is a Big Ten championship caliber roster. But if you're going to get a quarterback play where, yeah, Clifford is maybe nothing great, he's not going to go out there and necessarily beat a team, but he's also not going to beat your own team. Hey, I would take that. Had you told me coming into the season that through the first 2 games here, Clifford was going to have no turnovers, I would have signed me up, especially with Wisconsin being that first game. And like we said, Ball State was not a slouch of an opponent today. So I do think that Clifford has made a lot of strides under Yurcich, which is great to see. And that can only bode well for Penn State moving forward throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'd say I'd agree with all that. And speaking of Yurcich, I thought overall, once again, I think he called a great game, and I think what stuck out to me the most when I say he called it was during the second quarter, maybe like kind of late second quarter. The offense was, they were kind of slowing down a bit. I think they had come away with a field goal the previous drive, or maybe they didn't even get any points. Might have been the only drive they didn't score on. But anyways, like, 17-6, late second quarter, you're kind of looking to get another touchdown, just really step on Ball State's throat before the half. And, they realized when Cliff was going back to try to look to Jahan Dotson for a deep ball or whatever, like trying to look for a downfield throw, the pressure was getting to him from Ball State's D line. And so he adjusted by, has Cliff throw a quick bubble screen to Jahan Dotson, who probably to a few people's surprise takes it to the house off the bubble screen. But it's those little adjustments he makes. If something's not working, like he'll just try something else to. And I think even more importantly, we saw with the running game. But if something is working, if Noah Kane or Kevon Lee is gashing you on the ground, like they're just going to keep throwing it at you until you can show that you can stop it or slow it down. So once again, I think it was a very well game. I mean, very very well called game from Yurcich, even if, of course, the execution may not have been perfect at all times. But again, I think it's silly to expect perfection of any kind with any sporting event, if you ask me. And so, I guess as far as when we talked about the running game, we know last week that was an issue for maybe up until early fourth quarter when Noah Kane got going. But today, from the start, it seemed like they were able to set the wait, what's the word? I'm losing. I'm forgetting the word, but set the tempo, set the tone. set the tone for
They
you
said
know
the
more
pound remind
balanced
me who's
attack.
going there. Yeah.
It was definitely more balanced attack from the get go, and that because they were able to run Noah Kane from the beginning and Kevon Lee. I should say Kevon Lee, he had a very I say a nice bounce back performance after an abysmal week one at Wisconsin. I don't know about you, but I enjoyed the Saquon Barkley impression he did with catching the ball on the wheel route. I mean, I had to do a double take to see that. That was number 24 making those plays. So
Yeah, it was great to see, Kevon Lee, big bounce back game. I thought Noah Kane looked great today. I thought even in their action, Devin Ford and Keziah Holmes looked really good. I was texting with a friend of mine during the game, and one thing I said to him that was really nice to see is I feel like dating back to very early in the Saquon Barkley era, when they had Saquon Barkley and Miles Sanders on campus, Penn State has always had a very deep running back room. Penn State has not always used all of those running backs. And it was great to see early in the game today, Noah Kane gets a handoff. Kevon Lee gets a will route, bubble screen to Devin Ford. It was good to see them taking a position of strength and using it on offense, which is something that, I loved Joe Moorhead as offense coordinator, but that was one of my few complaints with him as offense coordinator was him not incorporating guys like Miles Sanders, guys like Andre Robinson into the offense more when Saquon Barkley was here. You have a deep running back room, use them, and it's great to see Mike Yursich using them. We saw it today, like you said, that Will brought to Kevon Lee was great. Devin Ford got a run. Keziah Holmes was flashy in the fourth quarter. Why? He was a four-star recruit out of high school. Penn State's running back room might be as deep as anybody in the country. And it was just really good, not just to see that running back room flash that potential today, but to see the offensive coaching staff setting these running backs up for success and to use all of these running backs in the game.
no doubt. I guess going over to the defense now. Once again, they Ball State did not reach the end zone until garbage time in the fourth quarter. Which if you told me that was going to happen going into today, I would have gladly taken it because I really thought they were going to get find the end zone a couple times while the game's outcome was still in doubt. But you know, once again, I personally I think the defense really did a great job holding that, holding like a solid Ball State offense in check. And as I mentioned before, those two stops in the red zone where they settled for field goals. But I will say I was a little, I guess as a Penn State fan, I was happy he chose to kick instead of going for it on fourth and goal with on the final play of the first half. But you asked me if you're a 22 and a half point underdog on the road, you're down 21 points. It's the last play of the half. You're at the opponent's 4-yard line. I mean, I say you go for it. What do you got to lose? I mean, what the old hashtag kickings for quitters.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. If I'm Ball State, I would have gone for it there. Nothing to lose, everything to gain. You're a 22-point underdog on the road, facing maybe the largest crowd you've ever played against in program history. I would have gone for it there. I do think Penn State today got some help from the Ball State coaching staff and stuff like that. But at the same time, I would also argue that some of that comes from respect for Penn State. They may not have been confident in their ability to get those 3 or 4 yards against the Penn State defense and score. So I think that also needs to be a factor in there. And I just think that, that's one of those kind of hidden areas in the game where you see the talent gap between two teams kind of shine through without necessarily truly seeing it. You'll see the talent gap when an offensive line is pushing a defense around. You see the talent gap when receivers are running past defensive backs. You don't necessarily see that when a offense is kicking the ball on fourth and goal inside of the 5 instead of going for it. But that's also part of the equation there where they don't feel confident in their offensive line's ability to move Penn State's front 7 out of the way and get those 3 or 4 yards and get into the end zone.
Yeah, I mean you do hit on with whole respect for Penn State's defense. But again, I feel like that's something. I was a little surprised. I figured they they had nothing to lose by trying to go for it and not getting it. I mean, worst case, you're still down 3 scores at the half, which they were anyway when they kicked the field goal. And, let's put it this way. Let's say they go for it and they get the touchdown. And as you saw, Penn State didn't get points on their first possession of the second half. Of course, neither did Ball State, but they could have been in a position though where if maybe they had forced they say they got the touchdowns 24-10 half. Let's say they get a 3 and out or whatever. And all of a sudden here they are, a chance to, if they can maybe get a couple of big plays, suddenly they're knocking on the doorstep again in the red zone with a chance to cut it to a 7-point game with another touchdown. And then, you know, definitely would have, definitely would have made for a more interesting game, to put it lightly, if that would have happened. But again, just a little baffling if you ask me. But I'd say overall, I mean, the defense, I think you would agree, defense really played lights out, the starting unit especially.
Yeah, that's another topic I touched on in my takeaways article for Black Shoe Diary. So, not to be a shameless plug here or anything, but feel free to go check that out when it goes live here at 8 p.m. tonight. Is that this might be the best defensive group we've seen from Brent Pry. This defense is fast. They're aggressive. This defensive line, this is 2 weeks in a row, the defensive line has controlled the line of scrimmage, and it's come against two solid teams. Again, like we've said, not to keep beating this dead horse, but Ball State is a good MAC team. Last week against Wisconsin, which year in and year out, you expect Wisconsin to have one of the better offensive lines, not just in the Big Ten, but the entire country. And I felt like Penn State's defensive line just totally dominated the Badgers last week. And, Arnold Bacade, PJ Mustipher, Derek Tangelo, Jesse Luquette, Nick Tarber, it doesn't matter who it is, who they're putting out there. That defensive line has been awesome. The front seven's really good. This secondary might be the best, not just in the Big Ten, but among the best in the entire Power Five. This is a really, really damn good Penn State defense. And I think this defense is going to give Penn State a legitimate shot at not just beating everybody they play this year, but a legitimate shot at winning the Big Ten this season, especially after what we saw from Columbus today. I think Penn State is very capable of winning the Big Ten this year. And I think a lot of the sorts of the defense and, anyone who reads Black Shoe Diaries, our fellow Black Shoe Diary writers who have been in that Slack channel know that Tim and I have been as detrimental, or however you want to put it, against Brent Pry as anybody. But I got to be the first to admit that Brent Pry and that defense have been awesome this year, and Brent deserves a lot of credit for that. And I really do think that we're seeing this Penn State defense blossom into being one of the best in the country. And again, we saw that again today, and it's just great to see because, you can have the best offense in the world. If your defense stinks, there's no guarantee you're going to be in every game. If you have a great defense, you can have an offense that has struggled like we saw with Penn State in the first half last week, like we saw at times in the second half today, and you're going to be in every game because your defense will keep you in it. I feel like that's where Penn State's at right now. And Brent Pry, his assistants, Terry Smith, John Scott Jr., who's taken a ton of flack from Penn State fans, Anthony Poindexter, they all deserve a ton of credit for the way this defense has played this far.
I think you definitely nailed it on the head there, Marty. I will add, I think what stuck out to me most about, we mentioned how its defense is Brent Pry's best so far, just different from prior years. I think this comes from how aggressive they are in going for the pick. And I you saw Jesse Luquetta's pick six, which really, that effectively shut the door on any hope of a Ball State comeback. I mean, granted, at that point, it's 24-6, like midway the third quarter. It's not like Ball State was really having like an easy time moving the ball, but that door is still a bit open. But that pick six just completely shut it. Because I remember thinking to myself, offense needs to put up one more touchdown, and this thing is over. But it was nice to see when the offense was sputtering a little. At least the defense sometimes can come up with maybe a pick six, or even just if they can just force a turnover deep in their territory and set up the offense with short field. I mean, those things are huge as well. But yeah, I mean, and then you saw Jair Brown once again dropped an interception. I think he's probably dropped more interceptions than he's gotten so far. But he's a guy who's all over the ball too. It seems to me, and Joey Porter Jr. It just seems to me there's a lot more awareness, or just whatever the defensive staff is teaching them about defending passes. I'm noticing a marked difference between this year and prior years.
Yeah, I am too. And I remember coming out of camp, Pry, his assistants, players, all talking to reporters about the emphasis Penn State wanted to put on forcing turnovers this year. They felt like they did a much better job in preseason camp of forcing turnovers, which I think at the time a lot of Penn State fans were like, oh yeah, you forced turnovers against Sean Clifford. And again, like we said, through 2 games, Sean Clifford has not turned the ball over. So that might be more of a testament to the Penn State defense than anything else. And through 2 games, we've seen that. Against Wisconsin, those 2 big interceptions by Jaquan Brisker and Jair Brown, the pick 6 today by Jesse Luketa that you mentioned was just a terrific effort in just individual play. The interception by Daquan Hardy, his first career interception. Penn State's defense has been swarming to the ball all season long, which is awesome to see. And I really do think that whatever it is that they change with their defensive philosophy in the offseason, maybe that was bringing Anthony Poindexter on as safeties coach. Maybe that was having a normal offseason with John Scott Jr. around where he can contribute more to the defensive game planning. Whatever it is, it has worked. It has been awesome to see. And, Tim, I'm sure you agree with me. The defense we've seen the last 2 weeks is not the Penn State defense we are used to seeing, dating back to probably the Minnesota game of 2019. Down the stretch in 19 and all of last season, this defense was just woeful. And all of a sudden, this defense finally looks like a group that has a bunch of 4- and 5-star studs running around. And it's wonderful to see as a fan. And it really instills confidence in you throughout the rest of the season that Penn State's going to be able to not just hang with everybody they play, but, be right there and potentially beat every opponent, Ohio State included, left on their schedule.
No doubt. And I think we will certainly get to that game in Columbus in a little bit. But I do want to shift a little bit. Of course, overall, very good game. But of course, as I said, nothing is perfect. There are some things that can always get better at. A couple of things that stuck out to me. I think the pass protection from the offensive line was spotty at times. I lost count just how many times Cliff was trying to look for that downfield shot, and then he had to bail out because the pressure was getting to him. And also, Jordan Stout, he did make a few field, but he did also shank a 45-yarder. I guess it was better than last week. He didn't miss any extra points, so give him props where it's due. Or didn't shank something inside 30 either. But felt like field goal kicking still a bit of an adventure. What were some things that you think can be improved upon between now and next week?
Yeah, I think between now and next week, I agree with Stout that field goal kicking still not perfect as you want to see. And Auburn's definitely a team where you could potentially see a missed field goal coming back to bite you. I think also it's just offensively, I want to see this team get in a rhythm and stay in it. The first 4 or 5 possessions today, they look like the team in the second half last week against Wisconsin. They're clicking. Guys are open. They're running the ball. Cliff's got time. Cliff looks good. And then they came out towards the end of the second quarter. You could see things getting a little shaky on offense and into the early third quarter. Now, towards the end of the third quarter, early into the fourth, they kind of got the wheels going again offensively. But we have yet to see a whole game, a full 60 minutes out of this Penn State offense that looks good. I would love to see it next week against Auburn. I will say, I think next week, I was not there today at Beaver State, and I would love to be talking to various people there, including Clay from Black Shoe Diaries, who was on the show last week. I was texting him a good bit. He said that the atmosphere was electric at Beaver Stadium today for a MAC school. I can't even begin to imagine what it's going to be like next week for a whiteout, SEC, Auburn. Tim, I know you're going to be there. I'm sure by the end of the night, you among 100,000 other people have no voice left. I fully expect that atmosphere to be electric. And I want to see the Penn State offense feed off that. I want to see the Penn State offense put together 60 good minutes because, I don't think Bo Nix can walk into that atmosphere and lead Auburn to victory without Penn State's offense making mistakes. So I think that's the biggest thing I want to see moving forward from the Nittany Lions is this offense put together 60 good minutes. I know they've had some hiccups on special teams, but Joe Lorig is widely viewed as one of the best special teams coordinators, if not the best in the entire country. Jordan Stout is going to play on Sundays for a long time, whether it's punting, kickoffs, whatever it is. He's a terrific kicker. Their special teams are going to be okay. I'm very confident in saying that. The offense, I need to see more out of Cliff. And I think we saw a lot out of them today that really soothed over some things. But I need to see the offense put together for 60 minutes. Moving forward, that's what I want to see most from the Penn State team against Auburn next week. I want to see 60 good minutes of offensive football. If that happens, I have no doubts the Lions move to 3-0. And, at that point, outside of a trip to Kinnick Stadium and a trip to the Horseshoe, there's not a whole lot of other potential obstacles left on the schedule.
Yeah. Well, essentially, you do bring up, a whiteout game, and I guess we'll transition to next. I guess you could say it's officially whiteout week, or tomorrow will be officially whiteout week. Auburn bringing it sizzling 61 points per game coming into Beaver Stadium. They did beat, it was Akron and Alabama State, which I think Ball State could probably put up 60 points on those teams, if you ask me. But, of course, credit to them. They did light up some very bad teams. So it's not like if they didn't, then there will really be some problems with Auburn. But as you say, this will be a step up for them as far as opposing defenses, to put it lightly. And you mentioned the whiteout. I mean, today, it's from what it sounded like. Yeah, you mentioned with Clay telling you, and just from what it seemed like watching the broadcast, the fans were much more into a game against a MAC opponent than they typically would be. I mean, just being grateful to finally be back in the stadium and cheering on their team for the first time in almost 2 years. And, and now with, for this will be the first whiteouts since the before times. I mean, I can only imagine. I'm already picturing how deafeningly loud it's going to be next Saturday, and how and the effect it could have on Bo Nix and just and just just that offense in general, trying to get the signal to play call and all that. I think we'll keep playing that YouTube clip of Michigan false start having to call a timeout on the very first play of the game in order to avoid a delay of game, because it just got so definitely loud in that 2019 whiteout game. I'm picturing something like that, but like dialed up to 11.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like you said, the first whiteout since, the pre-COVID era, and just Auburn coming to town, a top 25 team, an SEC team. And, is Auburn truly a top 25 team? That's debatable, but as long as they're in the SEC, they're always going to get that respect. And, if Penn State can come out and take care of business against Auburn next week, you're looking at Penn State being 3-0 with a road win over a top 15 Wisconsin team, home wins over Ball State, who is defending MAC champions and was, I think, like 38th or 39th in the AP poll this week, and a whiteout victory over an Auburn team that's ranked in the top 25. You'd be hard-pressed to find a team with a better resume 3 weeks into the season than that. And, I think this could set up very similar to that 2019 Penn State season, and the Nittany Lions started, I believe, was 8-0, and then wins against Michigan, a non-conference win against Pitt, a tough win against Iowa, where they could be ranked pretty high because of their resume. Excuse me. And these tough games are going to do nothing but just continue to pad the Nittany Lions' ability to go on and potentially compete for a Big Ten championship this year. They've been there. That Iowa game, the Wisconsin game is the benefits of that cannot be denied. Have to fight scratch and claw. A game today against Ball State, a good team to come out, get that big lead and not let up and bury them. Again, that's the kind of stuff that championship caliber teams do. It's just great to see from Penn State. And, this is shaping up to potentially be a really good, maybe even special season in Happy Valley.
Well, certainly. Obviously I haven't done, I don't know a whole lot about Auburn outside of Bo Nix. I know their running back Tank Bigsby is supposed to be a beast. So it'll be interesting to see how our front seven handles that next week. But it's one of those games, I think if they win next Saturday, and I figure they'll be favored. I don't know what the line is going to be. I guess we'll find out tomorrow how much. My guess is they'll probably put us at about maybe 6.5 would be my guess. Probably about a touchdown favorite. So if they can kind of live up to that billing, at least get the win. I feel like they're going to be undefeated going into that Iowa game, that second weekend of October. And like you said, Marty, that was 2 years ago when they had that better than expected season that ended with an 11-2 Cotton Bowl victory. They grinded out some tough wins. I mean, they beat a tough Pitt squad, a gritty Pitt squad at home. It was a bit of a rock fight. And then more importantly, they went on the road at Iowa, ranked Iowa team, hostile environment. And, they won a defensive slugfest there. 17-12 was the final. And they were able to actually grind out the final few minutes of the clock for once instead of, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat like they have done so many times, it seems, under James Franklin. But if they can, I agree. There's a potential for this to be a special season. I think last week at Wisconsin, the way that the defense bent but didn't break, and then today, got up early on maybe the best team in the MAC. Perhaps Toledo has something to say about that after nearly upsetting Notre Dame today. But as far as we know, the defending MAC champions, they came out and just stepped on their throats. They did not let Ball State really think that they had a shot to come out of Beaver Stadium with a shocking win. And that's, like I said, that's what you want to see. That's what championship caliber teams go out and do. So I'm excited. I'm interested to see how they do against Auburn next week. If they're able to, they can get up on them early and then kind of hold firm defensively, keep them in check, maybe they grind out like a 7-10 point win, which is probably what you'd hope for, at least if you're a Penn State fan. Of course, win like a margin like today's would be awesome, but I'm not banking on that. Auburn is a good team, so give them credit where it's due. But anyway, that's enough talking about. That's enough time about Auburn. Speaking of other games, looking on the Big Ten. I got the Iowa State game on TV in front of me right now. Iowa's currently up 27-17. Final few minutes. Looks like they're gonna take out their rival once again. But probably the biggest result today in the Big Ten, as you alluded to earlier, was in Columbus, where Oregon, led by offensive coordinator, former Penn State offensive coordinator Joe Moorhead, went into the Horseshoe and stunned Ohio State 35-28 to final. For Ryan Day, it's his first ever regular season loss as the Ohio State head coach. Of course, it took him till his third year to get there, much like his predecessor, Urban Meyer. So, Marty, you kind of mentioned it before, but how are your feelings about the Penn State Ohio State game now? Obviously, I guess with a caveat that this is still maybe an experience, but it's a talented Ohio State team, and they will have time to get better, work out the kinks. They could be in better form by late October when Penn State comes to town. But do you think they are more beatable now after witnessing what you saw today?
Yeah, after what I've seen from Ohio State these first 2 weeks, I definitely think they're more beatable. Ohio State's wide receivers are absolute studs. They might have the best wide receiver group in the country. That said, Penn State's secondary might not just be the best in the Big Ten, potentially the best in the entire Power Five. at least in the conversation, which I think kind of helps offset some of that. CJ Stroud today, I think his final total yardage and touchdown to interception ratio is going to make it look like he played a lot better than he did. I'm not sold on CJ Stroud. I think Penn State's front seven can really, even with the game being Columbus, can really give Stroud problems. And I think their secondary can cover these receivers. I think Ohio State's defense is nothing great. Excuse me. It is one that I think guys like Jahan Dotson, Noah Kane, Parker Washington, Keandre Lambert-Smith, those guys can exploit and take advantage of. I'm not saying that Penn State's going to go into Columbus on Halloween weekend and beat the Buckeyes. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, as a Penn State fan, I feel 100 times better about Penn State's ability to go into Columbus and beat the Buckeyes now than I did 2 weeks ago. I think Penn State has played much better football for the first 2 weeks of the season than Ohio State has. And, as you mentioned, Tim, with Joe Moorhead, this win today had to feel good for Jomo. That 2017 game, I'm sure, is one that still haunts him, haunts James Franklin. I know it haunts you and I. We've talked about it endlessly, where this Penn State program might be had they come out and just finished off those last 10 minutes in Columbus in 2017. So I'm sure for Joe Moorhead, it feels great to get that victory in Columbus and get out of there. And I'm super happy for him. He's a great guy. One of my favorite things I love to tell about Joe Moorhead, this is completely off base, and I apologize for fans who don't want to hear this, but, Moorhead, for whatever reason, I have no idea why, wastes his time following me, of all people, on Twitter. And Moorhead
He follows me too, Marty. So
yeah,
not just
yeah, I don't know if he just deems us as being credible because we work for Penn State side or what. But for those who don't know, Joe Moorhead, he is from Pittsburgh. I am from Johnstown, which is about 60 miles from Pittsburgh. So the same culture and everything. And like 2 years ago, I was at a bar, this right before COVID hit, and a band was playing a cover of Donnie Iris, which is a local kind of like music legend in the Western PA area. And I tweeted something about being at a bar and a band playing the cover of Donnie Iris, and how this is like the most Western PA thing in the world. And Joe Moorhead liked my tweet and responded to it, agreeing with me. It is like the most Western PA thing in the world. So like, I love Joe Moorhead. I'm so happy for him to get that victory. But yeah, to circle back to Penn State, I'm not saying they're going to go into Columbus and beat the Buckeyes on Halloween weekend. All I'm saying is, had you asked me 2 weeks ago as opposed to today I feel 100 times more confident in Penn State's ability to go into Columbus and take down the Buckeyes and potentially win the Big Ten East and put themselves in a position to make the college football playoff than I did 2 weeks ago.
Well, there you have it, folks. Marty thinks Penn State's going to beat Ohio State this fall. No, I'm kidding. But I do agree. It's gonna. I am a little. Again, I guess I don't want to say I'm saying Penn State's going to win, but they do certainly look more human, more vulnerable than they did just a week or two ago. I mean, I guess the Minnesota game kind of showed some cracks in the armor, but especially on defense. I mean, offensively, as you can see, I mean, they're still very much capable of lighting it up offensively speaking. And so that'll definitely, I'm sure, be the biggest test yet for that Penn State defense when it happens. But that's neither here nor there. But I do think it's a game where, there might be a chance for, if the Penn State continues to, if the offense continues to, improve, like get a little more polished up, the defense continues to play lights out, and maybe again just maybe polish some things up, maybe get a little bit better pass rush, more consistent pass rush, perhaps. I think it is certainly a game that's potentially there for the taking. That being said, perhaps C.J. Stroud puts it together by midseason. Perhaps some of the, I think they might have some younger guys on that D line or the defense that might get a little better as the season goes on. But but we'll see. It's definitely, I'll say I thought of it as a probable loss before the season started. Of course, I guess you asked me, I still think Ohio State would win a close one, but I definitely don't feel like Penn State's going to get blown out, knocked around going into that game. So again, we'll see. We'll find out eventually how that goes. But of course, Auburn, 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 and nothing else, as James Franklin would tweet out. Actually, I guess now he's just saying 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, which, yes, me, it's a little bit lame. I kind of liked it when he listed the opponent's name 100 times in his tweet. So, but yeah, I guess final thoughts. As player of the game, for me, I would have to say it's Sean Clifford. I know he, wasn't, he wasn't perfect. He did have some overthrows he'd like to have back. Maybe took a few too many sacks for my liking, but overall, 21 for 29, 230 yards, 1 touchdown. More importantly, no interceptions. No real, like I said before, no real boneheaded mistakes that would have given Ball State a short field or could have resulted in 6 points the other way. Nothing like that. He did an overall solid job. Got the ball in the hands of his playmakers, which is really what you want him to do. He doesn't have to be a world beater. You don't have to rely on him to carry the team on his shoulders. If he can just distribute the ball to the bevy of playmakers in this Penn State offense, this team this offense and this team in general can go a long way, perhaps all the way to Indianapolis.
Yeah, excuse me. I agree with you. Cliff had an awesome game. Just to change up a little bit, player of the game's not the same. I'll go with the running backs as a crew. Noah Kane had
Introducing new It Takes Two, your favorite Sally Hansen miracle.
ESPN got you there. You there, Marty? Oh, you're muted.
There we go. There was an ad on ESPN that started playing. I apologize.
Yeah, I was going to say
it was on the box score page. I apologize, but Noah Kane had 99 yards total offense between rushing and receiving. Kevon Lee averaged 8.5 yards a rush, and also had that one catch on the wheel route that we mentioned for 24 yards. I thought Devin Ford played a good game. He averaged 5.3 yards per carry, and also had a reception on the game. So I'm going to go with running backs as a whole. Just change up from Clifford. I think the running backs played really well today. And, yeah, it's just good to see with Penn State coming out on offense and having multiple options that you could pick from for the player of the game. Because I feel like even, 2 years ago in 2019, when Penn State was an 11-2 squad, a lot of weeks it was KJ Hamler and nobody else, So it's nice to see the offense kind of clicking to the point to where you can have multiple options for your player of the game.
Yeah, certainly. That's definitely a good choice too for players of the game. Well, final thoughts. So I guess as far as other Big Ten action going on right now, Michigan, and I don't know about you, but I'm kind of going to be watching Washington, Michigan for a couple of reasons. One, I'm curious to see how Michigan does against a defense with Paul like Washington's, but perhaps even more so, I kind of want to point and laugh at John Donovan when that offense, fails to reach the end zone tonight.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I hope, on one hand, I hope Washington wins the game just because, it's Michigan. On the other hand, I want Washington to lose because, A, I can't stand John Donovan for what he did here for 2 years at Penn State. And also, Blake Corum, the stud freshman running back from Michigan, in today's example of It's a Small World, his cousin is actually my 11-year-old son's best friend. So, it's cool to see him do well, knowing the family, because he comes from a really good family. I know his aunt and uncle really well. They're great people. But, yeah, that's a game for me. I'll be very intrigued in it to watch what happens. I think we'll also learn a lot tonight about Michigan and Washington in general of, can the Michigan offense get going against a good defense? And that'll be something for Penn State fans to watch. I think if Michigan's offense struggles tonight against Washington as a Penn State fan, you got to feel pretty good about them coming to Happy Valley in November. And if that Michigan offense gets going against Washington, hey, you might have more of a game on your hands than you anticipate when Michigan comes here in a couple months. But that'll definitely be one that I think not just Penn State fans, but fans of the Big Ten in general should be keeping an eye on this evening.
No doubt. But yeah, that's that'll do it for tonight's show. Thank you all for tuning in, all 5 of you on there. This has been this Tim Aid and Marty Leap, blackshoediaries.com. Marty will have his 3 takeaways up shortly, I understand, or it's about to go up.
Actually, it just went live about 30 seconds ago, so feel free to hop over to Black Shoe Diaries for my 4 big takeaways from Penn State's win over Ball State.
Excellent. Well, again, blackshoediaries.com if you want to read Marty's 3 takeaways from today's game. Thank you for tuning in. Those of you on the Big Ten and the Penn State channel on the Voice of College Football, Mark Rogers TV. We're signing off. We will see you next Saturday night after the Auburn game.